My Hero Academia is over, but that doesn't mean we're gonna stop learning things about the series, like just where our favorite characters place in the top hero rankings, or even deeper stuff like the backstory of Nana Shimura's husband. Stay tuned because we're gonna get to 10 interesting things we learned after the end of MHA, whether it came from Horikoshi's own mouth, the volume extras, or even the recently released final Ultra Age Databook. But first, before we reveal just how Deku became a teacher and what subject he teaches, or just what Horikoshi's plans are for his next series, let's talk about the sponsor for this video, because there are some other heroes coming to Fortnite. This video is sponsored by Epic Games. Today, the strongest hero in manga is finally making his debut with a few friends, thanks to the One Punch Man collab featuring outfits for Saitama, Genos, and the Terrible Tornado. All starting on Wednesday, August 27th to Friday, the 5th of September, where you can get your hands on the bundle, which includes a lot of different items, like an original pickaxe for each character, and any of a wide variety of back blings and emotes. But first, where are you gonna use them? Well, usually in Fortnite, you drop into a lobby of 100 players to be the last one standing. But in the new Fortnite Blitz Royale, you can actually play in teams of up to 6 in matches of 32 players that end up being really action-packed since there's no building and the maps are smaller. As you play this mode and you get more and more eliminations, you start to increase your Blitz level while the storm closes, and that'll give you powerful weapons or useful items to win the game. And I've been having a blast playing the game this way because with a solid team, it's been so easy that I even have time to do Saitama's workout routine during the match. But if you find yourself playing the original Battle Royale mode where you can ride around in vehicles, you can actually make use of the new cosmetics for the Jackal vehicle, which now has a really cool wrap thanks to this bundle. And also you can customize the vehicle even further to give it Genos style wheels. But I like to edit it a little and add the Terrible Tornado boost effect since that's honestly what looks cooler to me. Speaking of Terrible Tornado, personally, she has my favorite back bling because it's this funny little Terrible Tornado from the series. And honestly, using these outfits has brought me a lot of funny moments, like playing as Genos and just following any Saitama on my team around like he's my sensei, or role-playing as Saitama trying to protect Genos' core while you try and win the Battle Royale. And what's even better is Saitama has 2 styles allowing you to switch between normal and serious mode, just like how Genos has an emote that allows you to either power up or cool down. So whether you're just trying to casually win victory royales on the way to the nearest discount vegetables, doing your best to protect your sensei from everyone else on the map, or sending your Terrible Tornado to go wild across Blitz Royale, everything that comes with the One Punch Man bundle is available in the shop right now, so go and check them out before they're gone. And again, thanks to Epic Games for the sponsorship. Now let's get back to the video. Let's start uncovering the juicy details we learned about My Hero Academia characters, starting with a character we didn't even know there was much to learn about, Nana Shimura's still unnamed husband. From what we learned about in the Ultra Age Databook, Nana's husband was actually a pivotal figure in the battle against All For One back in their day, as originally Nana's husband and Gran Torino were part of the anti-All For One alliance, a group of quirk users and even regular people who took up arms against the Dark King and tried to save their country from his oppression. This team was created by En, the user of Smoke, and Daigoro Banjo, the Black Whip user, after En received One For All from the previous user, and they were actually a top secret group that even Nana didn't know about as she went on to give birth to their son Kotaro. One day, All For One cornered this organization and fatally wounded Nana's husband, buying her enough time to speak to him one final time, where he told her to basically join the organization and support One For All's user as much as she can, even if it means putting a target on her back and leaving their child without any parents. This is how dedicated he was. He felt like nothing was too much to give up in the pursuit of this fight, and ultimately he gave up his life. Now, Nana would really take these words to heart, since we know not only did she eventually give Kotaro up after she received One For All, but we learned that Nana was suffering quite a bit during her time with the quirk. By the time it reached her, it had so much power stored up inside that she and the past user felt like their body could literally crack at any given moment. But when she met All Might, she felt like he was a boy with endless vitality and a pure will, giving her a premonition that All Might would be the one to complete One For All and bring this battle to an end. To make this happen, Nana passed the quirk on to All Might, but actually kept leading All For One on a wild goose chase using the remaining embers she had, until he eventually cornered her and ended her life. This allowed her to buy enough time for All Might to train up and get significantly more powerful, and we know in her final moments she even helped him get away, so shout out to the Shimura family. Both her and her husband were some real ones, but I don't think I'd ever want a parent with that last name because it's like they're cursed. Speaking of cursed names, we actually saw probably the most cursed name being given to another member of Nana's family, Tenko, who was given the name Tomura Shigaraki, given to him by All For One since that's his true last name. However, in the data book, we finally learn the truth behind All For One's first name as well. You see, in this book, we actually learned that All For One's true name was Zen Shigaraki. But Pineapple, you ask, All For One and Yoichi never knew of their mother or father, so who gave them that name? Well, the story is actually darker than you think. You see, early on in All For One's life, while he was still roaming the world of his brother in the beginning of the Age of Quirks, Zen heard a rumor about a woman who used to stand outside all alone until eventually people noticed that she was pregnant. Even then, she continued to stand outside, leading the locals nicknaming the woman Shigaraki Tanuki. Now, Shigaraki is an actual place in the Shiga prefecture of Japan in the West, and in real life, they make these Tanuki statues that are said to bring good luck, hence the name Shigaraki Tanuki. However, one day the lady was no longer standing in her usual location, and instead her body was found by the riverside, starting rumors that some sort of abnormal monster was lurking in the area, and those rumors continued to spread for years and years until of course All For One heard them himself. And without knowing that the story was actually about his own mother, he liked the idea of a monster lurking nearby so much that he named himself after the story of this monster, of course not realizing that the story was actually about him. Now, for his first name Zen, he likely took this name because the word Zen translates to all in Japanese, and Zen wanted everything there was in the world. All in all, it's just crazy to me how even after the story, Horikoshi is still finding ways to make All For One creepy, because it's like it never ends with this guy. Now, moving on, after the defeat of Shigaraki at the end of the series, there's time for a lot of things that probably should have happened already, like Deku's promise to Overhaul that he'd help him, and the resolution of just what was going to happen with Eri once everything was said and done. You see, after Deku and Mirio saved her from Chisaki in season 4, Eri has basically been in Aizawa's custody since he was the only one who could turn her quirk off if it went out of control. As the series went on, we saw Eri training her quirk so that she can master it and keep it from raging, and eventually this culminates in her healing Mirio and even giving her horn to Deku so that he can get his arms back. Many people thought that this meant Eri's horn would never grow back, but eventually it did. However, more importantly, Deku did eventually find time to settle everything between Chisaki and the leader of their organization, who finally woke up thanks to these efforts. When this happened, the heroes called a meeting where it was decided that Eri would go live with Mandalay from the Pussycat Dolls, since Mandalay didn't really have anything left to do because she quit the hero team. This means that Eri actually got to grow up alongside Kota in a happy home and maybe even saw him like a brother. The two of them remained close as Kota became a UA student and Eri instead decided to focus on her future career as a musician, but it's good to see this confirmed, and it all makes me wonder if there was ever anything going on between Aizawa and Mandalay, or how often these two would have to speak to each other now, since they're basically Eri's new mom and dad. Well, at least in her eyes, I'm sure. I know a lot of people actually think it should have been Deku to adopt her, but I think he has way too much on his hands thanks to his day job, so let's start talking about that. After the end of the series' final battle between Deku and Shigaraki, we learned that eventually Deku became a teacher. But how, and more importantly, why? Well, we learned that despite losing One For All, Deku was still able to complete his 3 years at UA with just the Embers left over, even earning his official Pro Hero license along with the rest of Class 1A. However, ultimately, with the Embers fading away, Deku still wanted to pass his experiences on to the next generation in a very One For All way. But instead of just passing on power, he wanted to pass on knowledge. This led to him getting certified pretty quickly and landing a job at UA teaching history and hero history, a subject that Deku should have a lot of information on, given that he basically had the members and experiences of people that were actually there for every step of the way until the modern day inside of him. And this is also the perfect subject for him to teach, since Deku was always the biggest nerd when it came to heroes and their abilities or weaknesses. So maybe that analytical mind will spread to his students and create a legion of Dekus out there. In the Ultra Age Databook by Horikoshi, we also learned that Deku's bad habit of talking way too fast while he's giving out information, just like me, hasn't gone away, meaning his students definitely have trouble keeping up at times. However, they have to be proud of their teacher, since even when he was just teaching, Deku still placed high in all of the hero billboard charts, never going below rank 99, even though he didn't have any official cases solved as a pro hero. This of course changed as Deku eventually returned to hero work alongside his friends and eventually went up to number 4 in the hero charts, but even then he still works at UA as a teacher and even expanded his workload by teaming up with Ochako's organization to give speeches and teach lessons at schools all over the world. So Deku is gonna have a really busy life from here on out. But did you expect Deku to keep teaching after he got his life back? And do you think he'll ever pass on his suit onto a student the same way that All Might passed One For All onto him? But before then, it's time to keep talking hero rankings rankings, at least for the main trio, Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto. First off, we have Bakugo, who still wants to be the #1 hero of Japan, even though things haven't gone so well for him. We learn that Bakugo is actually on par with or even stronger than Lemillion, the #1 hero, but the public just can't get over how he acts. However, it's also noted that Bakugo's rating goes up significantly when he teams up with others, showing that he's really grown up from the kid who always had to feel like the main character. Some more facts about Bakugo are that Horikoshi says Bakugo is pretty high up on the list of high tax paying heroes, meaning he actually got pretty rich throughout his lifetime, and luckily for him, after everything he went through in the final arc, All Might actually did get to sign Bakugo's LR All Might card, but Bakugo asked for it without the usual All Might drawing that All Might uses, as proof that this is a signature from Toshinori Yagi instead of All Might the hero. As far as Bakugo's pro hero rank, we know that he started off at number 4 on the rankings when he first appeared, however he slid all the way down to number 15, partially because of his attitude, and also because he didn't really have a rival at this point. We know that after Deku gets his high-tech suit and returns as a pro hero, Bakugo's rank actually goes back up to number 5 as he pushes himself and likely finds his rank getting boosted from repeatedly teaming up with Deku, who was really the most popular hero on Earth even after he was a teacher. You'd think that all of this attention on Bakugo would further the rivalry between him and Monoma, but one final fact is that Monoma and Bakugo actually became friends after the war, becoming close because of their shared experiences on the battlefield, and showing that Monoma seeing Bakugo almost die and then get back up to kick butt was finally enough to earn Bakugo his respect. Talk about character development. It's just like how unexpectedly we have Mount Lady officially taking up the number 3 spot on the hero billboards chart because she's always been a really popular hero, but we saw her character evolve from trying to show herself off to the cameras in episode 1 to getting down in the nitty gritty with Gigantomachia and even teaching the students about PR, so this isn't too surprising. Above her, of course, we have Shoto Todoroki, the air conditioner hero, and this is another character who overcame a lot over the course of the series, with the public learning all about his personal family drama. However, Shoto overcame this and worked hard enough as a hero that people don't really think about Endeavor or Dabi anymore when they see him. He's a great enough hero to stand on his own, and honestly, the only thing probably holding him back from that number 1 spot is how oblivious he can be sometimes, because I bet he probably still sucks at interviews. However, Todoroki actually stands apart from the others on this list because of something set up way earlier in the story. You see, when Shoto, the air conditioning hero, helped those misbehaved brats at the Masagaki Academy, they actually nicknamed him 5 Weenies Man because of the shape of Todoroki's emergency supplies kit, a joke that continued on until the very end of the series. But now we're learning that it actually goes beyond even the end of the series, because after Shoto graduated and became the number 2 hero, the students of Masagaki School would go on to actually start a festival in honor of our hot and cold hero that they hold every single summer at the school. The Summer Cool Off 5 Weenies Festival, as they call it, actually manages to fit into Todoroki's schedule, as every year he shows up to take part in it, using his quirk to create massive ice slides and castles that students can have fun in, as he does his best to make everyone smile. This really makes me happy to see Shoto getting to have such a carefree life, because honestly, after everything he and his family went through in the series, he really deserved it. But I also just really enjoy seeing the edgy brat from season 1 of the series who would freeze an entire building just to win as quickly as possible, taking time out of his day for smaller things like this to just create joy in some student's life, which I'm sure is something Shoto wishes he had for himself back when all of his summers were spent in Endeavor's Inferno Dojo, just having to watch his brothers and sisters play. Speaking of Todoroki and his family, we also learned quite a bit about what became of Dabi and Endeavor after the story ends. Thanks to the Ultra Age Databook, we learned that for a while, Dabi finally got what he wanted most, and that was his father's attention, as Endeavor kept his promise to visit Toya every day in the hospital and spend the day talking to him as much as possible to make up for the years where they were enemies. This continues until Dabi eventually dies due to the damage he took during the war, but Endeavor never stops trying to make up for the damage his family drama caused. We learned that after the final battle, he was offered surgery to try to get him back in the field, however he rejected it and decided to heal on his own, which led to him being in a wheelchair for a long time with Rei by his side to help him get around. However, we actually don't know whether or not these two got back together, and I'm gonna assume they didn't. Eventually, Endeavor gets strong enough to walk around with a cane, and he spends the rest of his life trying to compensate the families of every Dabi victim, as well as helping All Might to improve support for civilians with lasting trauma or injuries from villains and in general. Aside from this, we learn that Natsuo still won't talk to Endeavor, promising him that the two of them will never see each other again as he moves away, but Shoto and Fuyumi still at least keep up with their dad. As far as his legacy, it's mostly gone by the end of the series, as only a few kids here and there still have Endeavor plushies from back in the day, but we know that Hawk still has his. This means that Dabi really got everything that he wanted, and the effects of what he did are felt for a long time after the show ends, showing just how impactful this villain was for a character who wasn't even the main villain of the series. Next up, we have to talk about some more villains, so of course we have new information on the fate of Himiko Toga. After Toga dies in My Hero Academia, many fans were actually pretty upset given that they expected her to live and get reformed, while many expected Dabi to be the one to take an early exit. However, again, thanks to the Ultra Age Databook, we learned that this was almost very different, as Horikoshi reveals he actually intended for Toga to survive the final war of the series, but the decision came down to the wire. First off, Horikoshi admits that Toga was supposed to be arrested and spend the rest of her life in jail for what she did, but this isn't exactly the most interesting ending for her character. This led to Horikoshi finding himself really struggling with her fate, so one day he asked his editor if it was just okay to kill Toga at the end of the story, and Horikoshi's editor actually told him it's not so easy to just change something so massive while they're working on the story, causing them to go on a 3-hour call to discuss all of the ways Toga's story would progress. One idea for Toga's story to end was for her to go missing during the final battle against Ochako, which would lead many to believe that she was actually gone. However, Ochako would know that Toga was alive by leaving fresh blood for her in the forest, which Horikoshi says would be gone the next day. This, however, ended up not being the direction that he went in, because he said it felt like a cheap way of ending her story, since no one really had to take accountability for her actions. In the end, after going with the decision to have Toga die by trading her blood with Ochako's, Horikoshi's editor said that her final lines about being just an ordinary girl gave him goosebumps. And honestly, as much as I would have wanted a happier ending for Toga, I have to agree with the editor that her ending in the series is bittersweet, but it's definitely really impactful. Almost done now, but I couldn't do this list without somehow working the hero of the villains in, so for Shigaraki, we actually learned something super interesting, and that's what exactly Shigaraki's original quirk was supposed to be if he never met All For One and had it switched out with Decay on that fateful day. By the way, I'm really glad that that was my theory all along and everyone acted like I was crazy, but from the very first day we got that chapter, I called it, I knew it! But yeah, we learned that Shigaraki was actually supposed to have a flying quirk, making it pretty similar to the float quirk that Nana had, but with some key differences. You see, we actually see All For One using Shigaraki's original quirk in the anime and manga when he starts to fly back to UA using this weird glowing ring in his feet, which honestly sort of reminds me of Koichi's quirk from MHA Vigilantes. Now, we do learn that this actually would have looked different for Shigaraki, because Horikoshi says this is the result of multiple abilities being combined together by All For One, but mainly the other abilities just add more propulsion so that he can go faster, meaning Tenko wouldn't have been the fastest hero in the sky, but he still would have been able to soar. Now, this is heartbreaking because I'm a big lover of the symbolism that different quirks in this series give their characters, like how Hawks had wings, but for most of the series he was probably the most trapped character there was, because he had to follow commands of a shady organization and even act as a double agent, making him like a bird in a cage. In fact, it isn't until Hawks loses his wings to All For One that he finally gains the freedom to be who he wants to be, and it's interesting how for Shigaraki, this is actually completely reversed, where originally Tenko was meant to awaken a quirk that would have let him free himself from the terrible situation he had at home and make him more similar to his grandmother, who had One For All and Float. However, All For One effectively took his wings away, trapping Tenko in the palms of his hands, where all the boy could do was destroy and rage, the more he felt suffocated from a society he couldn't free himself from. However, lastly, of course, with the news of Gege Akutami returning for his new manga after the end of JJK, I know a lot of MHA fans are wondering just when we'll see Horikoshi outside again, and we've actually already heard about what he's doing. In an interview with Marvel that came alongside this really cool art swap where Horikoshi was able to draw Spider-Man alongside Deku and All Might, Horikoshi jokes about how there's so much pressure from everyone else about what he's gonna do next, since MHA was so huge, and it got to the point where he told himself he would just draw the next series he worked on instead of writing it. Eventually though, after having a few conversations, people told him that he was crazy and that he should write his next series as well, something that he's already started to do, as Horikoshi says he's working on preliminary sketches and manuscripts for his next manga. But But for the meantime, before he announces anything, he wants to continue to support MHA because there are still a few events and things coming still. Now this has fans all over speculating. Will this new manga be a sequel to My Hero Academia, or are we getting something brand new from this author now that he should have the power to basically do whatever he wants? Many people will note how Horikoshi's art started to get pretty dark and even more detailed than normal, starting from around the Vigilante Deku arc all the way through the ending of the series. And Horikoshi himself has suggested that he wants to make a more horror-focused series eventually, so could that actually come true? Maybe in a year or two, we'll be reading a new Kohei Horikoshi horror manga set to carry Shonen Jump into another new era. But while he's working on that, there are some amazing new manga in the magazine that we're going to be taking a look at, like Ichi the Witch, or even stuff outside of the magazine like Gachi Akuda that I think I'm going to have to talk about more soon. So those are 10 interesting things we learned after the end of My Hero Academia. Thanks once again to the sponsor of the video, Epic Games, and if you want to learn more about My Hero or other series you're interested in, you should check out my Shorts tab where I talk about all sorts of shows and manga way more frequently. And I'll see you next time. It's Pineapple. Peace.